Welcome, dear listeners, to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we dive into unique experiences to help you and your team achieve maximum potential and flow. I am so excited for you to be here today. We have Keo Sar. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Matter Product Studio. Hi, Keo. Nice for you to join us.
My pleasure, Melinda. Happy to be here. Looking
I'm
forward
so
to it.
grateful. I'm looking forward to it too, because I know your powerful story and I'm so excited for the audience to hear it. Before we dive into your journey, tell us more about the success that you have achieved and accomplished, or your experiences and what you do as the COO and also angel investor.
Mm, yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO at Matter Product Studio. We're a technology consultancy, and we also build technology for mid-market and enterprise companies centered around AI. My background is in building and scaling tech companies. I've been at 5 different startups, 2 unicorns, one got acquired, one
Wow.
made it all the way to a Series B before it died. But being able to make it to a Series B is still a journey and a worthwhile journey for any startup because it
Right,
takes a lot of work to get there.
right.
And then more recently, as part of my role at Matter Product Studio, cleaning up the operations, getting it more streamlined, um, recentering how we approach our revenue production, and then making sure that ultimately, like, our clients have the best experience with us, and that we're able to deliver the quality of work that we say we will, and go above and beyond for our clients. Besides that, I get really excited and passionate about helping to develop emerging market ecosystems. So I work as a mentor, advisor, and an angel investors in emerging markets in Central Eastern Europe, and then have now started to take a look at Southeast Asia as well, and I've done some work in the Middle East and North Africa.
Mhm.
So, because my philosophy when I approach these things is that talent is equally distributed, but opportunities and access aren't. So, part of my mission and my goal is to be a bit of an equalizer, take my experience and resources and network to help founders that I think are building impactful companies to take the next step in their journey. Whether that ends up being successful or not, we can't say.
Right.
Uh, but I'll do everything I can to help them along that journey.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you've acquired so many resources and experiences and knowledge and people network, and
Mm,
it had so much success with the 2 unicorns, with helping startups, with the COO at Matter Product Studio. You've had so much success, and yet I know, and I'd love for you to share the journey, because it doesn't come overnight.
no, it certainly is not an overnight journey, and it's typically meandering. But I think we have to start at the beginning. My background's I'm Cambodian. My parents are refugees from Cambodia. A lot of people don't know what happened in Cambodia during the 70s and 80s, but there was a war that was happening there as part of the what the U.S. called the Indochina Theater,
Mhm.
and we got caught up in that. The war started in 75. That led to a genocide that wiped out something like a fourth to a third of the population during a 4.5 year period. But the war itself was almost a 20-year war, which
Oh,
not a lot of people talk about. As a result of that, my parents escaped Cambodia. So my mom escaped first into Red Cross refugee camps in Thailand. My dad, his story is slightly different because during that time they split men and women into different camps. My
mm,
dad was actually scheduled to be executed the day he escaped, because the Vietnamese army, um, you know, some people would call it invade, some would call it rescued. We're not here to discuss that. But yeah, they came in and all hell broke loose, and that's how we actually escaped and found his way to Thailand, to the
Wow.
refugee camp, and found my mom amongst, you're talking about tens of thousands of other refugees.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then,
Wow.
yeah, and that's where I was born. So I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand called Khao Dam, was the name of it, in Commune 6. Uh, almost 5 years ago to the date, I convinced some of my best friends to go back to Thailand with me to find this refugee camp, and we found it.
Wow. What was that
Yeah, it
like
was
to
a
see, like where you are today and where you all started born? What was that like for you at the refugee camp?
oh my, it was such an out of body experience for
Uh-huh.
me personally, because yeah, I stopped believing in coincidences, and the story is a year before the trip actually happened. I was doing a lot of research on where the camp was and if there were any organizations still connected to the camp that could point me in the right direction. Found an organization on Facebook, where they more or less were like caretakers of what was left of the camp. And it was funny. 6 months before the trip, I asked them like, "Hey, like I'm still planning on coming." They're like, "Great. Uh, when you get to the site, there's a small hut. There's some keys. Take the keys, let yourself in, do a self tour, and then make sure you lock up and return the keys." I'm like,
Wow.
okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But a month beforehand, I wrote them again just to confirm. I was like, hey, I'm still coming. I just want to confirm that someone, or the keys will be there and we can go in. And they're like, well, we actually have a caretaker now of the property, and he can meet you and give you a tour. I'm like, that's even better. That's wonderful. Turns out he wasn't just a caretaker. This gentleman, he was so gracious and so nice. Was He worked at the refugee camp
Mhm.
from the time it opened in the 70s to the time it closed in the early 90s. And he spoke French, he spoke Thai, he spoke English, he spoke Khmer, which is the official language of Cambodia, and I'm pretty sure he spoke Laos as well. And he gave us the entire history. And I told him, "Oh, could you take me to Commune 6? Because that's where my life began." And he's like, "Yeah, I can take you there." So apparently there was a bunch of mosquitoes because it's literally the jungle. It's at the foot of this mountain. And my friends that were with me, they're like, "You just walk through the jungle. We didn't follow you because there was a bunch of mosquitoes." I honestly didn't even feel it.
Uh-huh.
And I got to Commune 6 and just stood there. I was like, I still don't know what was going through my heart and mind at the time, but I'm like, this is where my life began.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's where that part of the story begins. We got sponsored by some family friends in San Diego, California. That's where I grew up. Before that, before coming to San Diego, we had a pit stop, if you will, in the Philippines. It was in a region called Marong, and they had what they call refugee processing centers, where they got you ready to acclimate within the country that you're going to, in this case, the US. But a lot of the Southeast Asia diaspora ended up in Canada, in France, in Australia, were kind of and the US, obviously, were the main spots. And the purpose of this transition camp was just to get you ready for life in this new country.
Hmm.
And Yeah, so we ended up in San Diego, where I grew up. And then for university, I decided to move to San Francisco, did my undergraduate degree in creative writing,
Hmm.
and then got my master's in finance. I
Love.
was working at two Fortune 100 companies, only to find I was not a corporate person whatsoever. And that's when my startup journey began. And yeah, that's the. There's obviously a lot of things in between, and we could talk about those too. But
Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
mean, I want to
there's
touch upon your dad. I think your dad had a huge influence Tell us
Mm.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
He very much believed in discipline, but I think more than anything else, he also believed in education. And education for him didn't necessarily mean school. It was how do you constantly learn and challenge yourself in that regard? Because his philosophy, and he used to tell me this all the time, was like, look, you know, we don't have a lot of resources. Like, you know, we grew up on welfare, government assistance, everything like that. So money was, you know, extremely tight. Um, so he felt strongly that if we got educated, because of his experience, you know, in Cambodia with the war and everything, like that's something that can't be taken from you,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
if you learn how to learn,
Hmm.
you'll always be able to reinvent yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
So
so
true.
that's something that's continuously stuck with me. And when I talk to people, and you know, from time to time, they're like, "Oh, tell me what your superpower is," and I just say, "My superpower is just learning,
And
and
reinventing.
just and reinventing and just figuring it out."
Yeah, but how
And
powerful that is. I mean, that's why you're great at helping these startups to get their, to get to where they need to be, because as startups, there is no path, there's no
mhm,
academics, there is no guideline, right? And so not meaning there's no academics, but there's no pathway. Like in academics, there's like a career path, or you take XYZ course and you graduate. There's no path. And so to have that mindset of it's okay, you can still learn, you can still invent, you
yeah,
can still grow, whether it's in school or whether it's your business, to constantly have that
mhm.
mindset, is what you've taken away from your dad, which is so
Yeah. eh, And I would also add, you know, he was also very good about letting me explore my curiosities.
yeah.
He didn't say I had to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. He's like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? Like, try it, figure it out. Um,
Oh,
and you know, he had this trust that uh, I would be able to figure out ultimately, which you know, especially coming from an Asian background, and hearing stories about, you know, Asian tiger parents, if you will, and like, you know, it's a Jay Shetty who has, you know, a podcast, and that, you know, pretty sure you know who he is. It's very like he's a British Indian, and one of the things he said that made me laugh out loud was it's like, yeah, you know, in our household, you had to be a doctor, lawyer, or a failure. He's like, so I'm basically a failure in my family's eyes. That's not the case anymore, but
right,
yeah,
right.
I really appreciated that about my dad, and yeah, it's carried me a long way being able to give myself the room to like create and to your comment, reinvent things.
Yeah, and have the huge success, like with your roles, with making money, and with your drive and working hard. You've accomplished a lot internally, externally. And then
Mm-hmm.
what was that like for you when you acquired so much externally? What was that like internally for you?
Oh, oof. That's that's a heavy question in a lot of ways, right? Because I think because of our background being refugees, there's always a flight to safety.
Yes.
And you want to be like my mom was definitely the more cautious one,
Mhm.
where you know, I would be at a job and I would tell her, as an example, Mom, I just got promoted, and she would be happy for me, but
Right,
then there's a but, right?
right,
And
right.
her but was, don't piss anyone off. Like, don't piss your boss off. Like, they might fire you. Your coworkers might be jealous of you, so you got to
Yeah.
be careful about that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you know, it was I tried to understand it as much as I could, but you know, I'll never fully understand it because I didn't go through what she went through during the war, losing, you know, family members, her younger sisters, and things like that. So that's not something I can relate to. I can try to empathize with her in that case, but it was also something that I didn't let hold me back because going back to like, I've worked hard for this
Mm-hmm.
and I know that. Um, and in terms of the success that I've had, it's for me, it's going back to I always bet on myself to figure it out
Mm-hmm.
along the way because the reality is I don't know everything. I still don't know everything. Um, and especially in the startup world, you're just constantly trying to figure things out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the companies that I think succeed, the entrepreneurs that I think succeed, and the founders, they're just really great at figuring things out in time
Right. Right.
because it's really about your ability to quickly problem solve for anything in the moment,
Right.
while still building for the long term.
Right. Right. Right.
And if you can really master those skills, it can take you a long way.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, and you're going to continue to do that, and you've continued to have the success. And you mentioned that sometimes at one point you stopped and you thought, okay, is this
Mm,
all there is?
yeah. Um, I, yeah, to more concretely answer that part, when I began my startup career, I had this like 5-year plan. Right, I was like, I'm gonna be an executive at a startup
Uh-huh.
and get into the C-suite, which I
Uh-huh.
made happen.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I got there, and my first question, it wasn't, I had a brief moment of excitement. I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Like I did it,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, I'm here. I made it to the promised
Yeah,
land.
that's it. From the promised
Um,
land. That's funny.
but afterwards, it was just like, oh, like, is this all there is to it?
Yeah.
There wasn't after that initial excitement, I wouldn't say there was a sense of fulfillment on my end
Mm.
because part of it was I've always been so focused on achieving my goals, um, that I don't know if I've actually very really taken the time to just enjoy it.
Mm.
And for me, this was a check off the box.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to achieve this goal of being an executive at a startup, making X amount of money, and achieve those things, but it felt hollow in a way
Oh, such
because it didn't really speak to like my true nature of having a bigger impact on the world and being able to help more people.
mm.
And that's when so at the last startup I was a chief revenue officer. We did enough revenue over a 2-year period while I was there that we were able to raise a $25 million Series B. At
Mhm.
which point, I thought it was a good time to take a step back and away from the grind of a startup. So, and I would also add to that, there was a personal tragedy that came up during that time as well. So my cousin, unfortunately took his own life.
Mm.
Not too long before we got to the finish of the raising the Series B, and it really took a toll on me in the sense that it accelerated my process of reassessing everything that was important. Um, because I think in our quest for achievement, we often miss the little things and the little signals in our lives,
Mm.
with the people that we love. And I felt that was part of it because we spoke not too long before he took his own life, and it haunted me for months because like the question that kept coming to me was like, did I miss something? Should I have been um, checking in more often? Should I give him better advice? And I'll never know. I'll never know. And it took me a long time to make peace with that. But in that process, it forced me to take a step back to reassess what was actually of value in my life. And for me, it wasn't like the money or
Mhm.
the achievements anymore. It was defined by freedom and
Mm,
impact. And the freedom was, freedom of like my time and commitment, uh, freedom to create the things that I wanted to create and get involved in.
right.
And I think I wrote this whole manifesto on it. And I just had this like outpouring of emotions and everything that I felt like had just been dormant for, a number of years.
Yeah.
Uh, and I took a mini sabbatical to be able to do that. And the second part of that was looking for ways to make a bigger impact. And that's when I started getting involved into these emerging market ecosystems and trying to see what founders are building something that I think has a potential to affect humanity in a positive way
Oh,
and figure out how I can support them.
yeah. How special. How special of that. And you know, I'm so sad to hear that your cousin did what he did. And yet like you then that drove you to go down and reflect and
Mm,
question and then that to actually turn that into something that is driving you to change humanity. um Thank you for your life, the cousin. I mean, and I'm sorry, do you remember, was there a sign when he went to you? What did he say? Was there a moment that in your heart
mm,
you kind of felt like I should have stopped at that moment? Because I'm diving into
mm,
communication here, because you mentioned in our quest to do more and achieve more, there are moments where people come into our lives. And I'm wondering, was there something in your heart where we were like, there's something really wrong here? Or maybe there wasn't. I'm just curious. Or were you so maybe just didn't
th-
know what to do? I'm curious to like breaking that down more.
yeah, that's a great question. And there was a few months because we text each other relatively regularly. Um,
Okay.
and one of the last messages I received from him was like, "Hey, cuz, can we talk?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Like, and it's not something that he texted regularly.
You would
Uh,
say
you
that,
know,
yeah.
yeah. So this was, uh, yeah, this was October of 2021 is when he took his own life. The last conversation we had was August of 2021. And I just remember it so clearly because I was on this work trip to Seattle. I was meeting a client, I was meeting an employee, I was at a hotel, and I had this hour-long phone call with him, and he just seems so lost. Uh, and the biggest question that he was trying to answer, or asking me to help him answer, was what was his purpose,
Yeah,
and how do you like how do you find that purpose?
yeah,
Which is I don't know if I don't remember what I said to him,
right.
because it can be so nebulous,
Yes, it
and
is
it's so
nebulous.
personal
Yes,
as well, because that purpose is it's different for each person.
yeah.
um and I might have said like, well, what are the things that you can't take off your mind, and like what are the things that get you excited about working on? So just giving him kind
Right,
of a series of questions to
right,
ask,
right.
because you know I I don't know how to solve these things,
No,
is the answer.
and I don't think that was your job. I mean, I think you do what that was brilliant. And like you asked them the question.
Hmm.
Ask him the question. And do you remember if he was able to say something? Like, or was he quiet? It's probably
No,
hard.
I mean, he was quiet, and it was, yeah, he said like, I'm lost, I don't feel like I'm contributing.
Yeah.
um and in the note, I don't know what the whole note said that he left, but the part that was read to me said something along the lines of like, I've been fighting demons for a long time, and no one else can help me.
Yeah.
So I, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, and I think over time you learn to make peace with the unknowns, because otherwise it drives you crazy.
Well, and I mean, I think honoring, I think in terms of when I know what I know about communication is like when you try to solve for them, it doesn't work. So
Mm,
when you really listen, going back to listening, and those words that he's using are so heavy, and feeling that with him,
hmm
taking a moment, I don't think that was a time to try to give him the answer, which is that's why you're asking
mm,
questions to help him. But I
hmm
think there's so much there that he needed to process to even before he even finds out what his purpose is, because he's sitting in a lot of shame and like, who am I?
Yeah.
So I think that's it requires a lot. And I want to like encourage everybody to really pay attention when people use words like that, to really just listen and not even
Mm,
sometimes have solutions, but listen and then hug them, hold them, remind them that they're worthy, remind you, but maybe not even just in your words, it could be action. I think I remember what you said
mm.
to me last time. Do you need a hug, or do you need advice, or do you need to be listened to? What was it?
Yeah, so it's I heard this on a podcast from
Yeah,
I think the gentleman's name is Matthew Abrams or Abraham. He's a communications professor at Stanford. He does a
yeah,
podcast, and he was just talking about how to communicate simply but effectively,
yeah,
and in certain situations before, and they taught this as part of elementary school training for teachers. I think it was like in the Northeast or something. I don't remember exactly, but they taught the teachers before they started down the road of trying to problem solve, asking the student, do you want to be heard? Do you want to be hugged, or do you want to be helped? I was like,
yes,
that's so simple and can be so effective.
right, right. So it's in those moments because they need to process in the way that will support them, empower them, and
Mm,
that means that sometimes we have to take a step back to give them what they need.
hmm
And you may not be that savior. You
Yeah.
being there in that moment was what he needed. You asked questions. It sounded like you were there for a long time at, talking to him and listening to him. But at the same time, we also want to empower people that they can
Mm,
be them for themselves. They need to do what they need to do for themselves. Um,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
So I utilizing what you said, that simple framework of, do you want to be heard, hugged, or helped? And then giving the rest, the outcome is really up to the universe, up to this person. Really.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and and for me it was, it took practice, because I
Yeah.
naturally I
You
I'm a
you
problem
you
solver.
want to.
So
You want to
naturally when
exactly.
something comes up, I'm like,
Right. Right.
okay, this is
Let's
what we're gonna do.
exactly. Exactly. And that doesn't help people. You know that sometimes that even
Yeah.
turns them off.
Yeah.
So yeah, so stepping back and like, yeah, giving them what they need, allowing them to process and trusting that the outcome is what their soul has wanted and signed up,
hmm
a part of it.
Yeah.
And so, but you just being there for them and him. So and I honor him. Our rest in peace, and now you have been able to take that and do good in the world.
Yeah. It took me, I think, 6 months before I was able to find some semblance of peace with it. And part of it was I wrote an article dedicated to him.
Oh, okay, we'll share. And you want to share that? Put it into the show notes. Would love if you want to share.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that would be.
yeah. No, because like one of our plans was um to go to Thailand
Uh-huh.
together, because he was half Thai, half Cambodian, and I was, I don't know if it was Netflix or maybe just TV, but there's this famous chef in J5 in Thailand, and she makes these incredible crab omelets, and it's, she's like probably the first, maybe only, maybe there's like one other now, like Michelin star, like street food vendor,
Uh-huh.
and people literally line up for her food. And I was listening, because they did an episode on her background. I'm like, this is so fascinating because, before that, she was working, if I remember correctly, at like a clothing factory,
Mhm.
and it burned down. And now she had to figure out how to make money to feed herself and her daughter.
Yes.
And so there's this really big why for her.
Mhm.
And even to take a step further, one of the things she mentioned during the show was, like her mom was against her cooking.
Mm.
Uh,
Wow.
and she, so part of that was also wanting to prove to her mom, and I don't know, proving her mom wrong is probably not the right way to think about that. It's probably like proving to herself that she could.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. I would agree
yeah,
with that. But I love
yeah,
how
and
something had to come down so for her
mhm,
to rise.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you also, and your dad too. You mentioned because your dad had a huge influence, and I want to honor him too because he's no longer with us as well.
Yeah, my dad, he passed away now over, it's about 9.5 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, and it was the period following that was, I would say, the darkest periods of my life, because he was my best friend. We spoke every Sunday. Uh, I lived in San Francisco at the time, and I would, go down to San Diego pretty frequently to spend time with him. We would go on drives and just talk, and um, it was it was difficult to get used to not speaking with him every Sunday,
Mm.
and to just be able to call him like, "Hey, I've got this situation," because he was always great, but like he never told me like, "This is what you should do."
Oh, I
He-
love that. Well, and then I just highlight the reason why is because, as you know, I'm a speaking coach, communication coach, and just that power of what we remember, our conversations. Every conversation is so important,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And not taking that for granted because you never know when you're not going to have that Sunday where you can just pick up the phone to call them.
yeah, no, that's exactly it. So, I envy everyone who still has their, yeah,
Parents, yeah.
yeah.
And so remembering
But
to use your voice as a way to connect. Mhm.
yeah, and I think the way I honor him is to continue to try to do the right thing and make an impact on the world, because he
Right.
was, um, he got hurt on the job. He was a janitor, and I had to
Mhm.
actually put these pieces together because I actually didn't know what he did. Like,
Wow.
I didn't know what a janitor, the concept of the janitor was. And a few years ago on a trip home, I found a janitorial certificate from, some nonprofit agency, and I I tried to look up the company that he worked for, asked my mom, and kind of, you know, getting to the conclusion that he was most likely a janitor, at this like medicine processing company in San Diego. Um, and yeah, like I said, part of the way I honor him, like, continue to contribute to the world in a positive way, because he very much believed in building community and providing services. So one of the things that he did, which like, being like his son, that I'm extremely proud of, was he built the Cambodian Buddhist Society in San Diego, and took it from like this one building and turned it into this, expanded probably 4 or 5 times the size of this property. And It was a community center. It was a school for both adults and kids to learn Khmer, which is our language. Um, religious holidays were celebrated there. And this was all, not, it wasn't paid work. And he poured so much into it. And I just remember this moment now that we're talking about it. He's we're going to the temple because that's where a lot of the meetings of the people involved in this work. And we walk into this very crowded room, and you can hear the noise as you're walking towards it. And as soon as my dad walks in the door, like it's just like silent. Like just this, like whatever noise was there was just like vacuumed out. I'm like, what's happening here? I don't remember how old I was. I was probably like 8, 9, and you know,
It's just my dad. So
Oh, I love that. Well, I love how you're able to transition.
oh,
Can you hear me?
I'm having a bit of an audio issue. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh. I think it's back.
Uh-oh.
You hear me?
1 second.
Okay. I can hear you, but it is.
Oh, okay. It was, I don't know why, but your voice sounded like a chipmunk.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, it went out for a little bit, but how
okay.
is it now?
It's fine now. I guess we'll just have to go without headphones on my end.
Oh, okay, that sounds fine. So we're almost at the end,
Okay,
so it's okay. We'll just pick up, we'll just edit that part out. But I was
that's
gonna,
fine.
okay, so we'll just take a pause. I think I was gonna say, okay, I remember what I was gonna say. Take a pause and say, I hear the transition. I mean, you
Mm,
lost someone so dear to you,
mhm.
and your dad, your best friend, someone you called every Sunday, someone who you connected with, and he was so honoring to you and respected you, allowed you to flourish, allow you to build on your strengths and to reinvent and to learn. He just let you thrive. And so that I
Mhm.
love that how when you communicate with each other, you felt safe. And
Yeah,
so for you to lose him, it was so hard. Like it was a heartbreaking moment. You're someone as a part of you is gone.
yeah,
And and I want to acknowledge your strength in honoring him and transitioning to do everything you go doing forward is almost like you remember him and you work hard and you do and you thrive because of his energy within you. It's like you take that forward and you propel and you use that going forward in all that you do. And so
yeah,
he's not forgotten. He's still with you and he's actually still giving you wings to fly. So
yeah. Every day. And he people think I'm crazy sometimes, but he does come to visit me
I love
in my
it.
dreams.
I love it. Oh, my mom too, I love it. They do come visit us. And because
Yeah.
they're still part of us and he's still with you.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. I believe that full and I feel it. I feel that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Keo. And I'm gonna just wrap up. What is, and then I'd like to ask you, and I ask all my guests, what is that one leadership golden takeaway that you
Mm.
want the audience to remember?
The one golden takeaway is understanding your team's why,
Mm,
um, and get to know their personal why so you can help connect their personal why to their business goals.
mhm.
And that way, it becomes more crystal clear why they've chosen to do what to do and be part of your team
Yes.
and work that they're doing, and also why they're doing it. It's not, and I tell my teams this all the time. I was like, look, you're not going to be here forever at this company.
Yeah.
Let's just be realistic about that. But however, while you're here, make the most of it. And I want to understand your why so I can help you make the most of it. Because I know the things that you do in your career to help grow your career is also going to have an impact on your personal goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. And it's like their motivation from within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll save you time from needing to micromanage because they're already driven from within.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's courage to help people find their why, because it is
Right.
nebulous, it is uncertain, but at the same time, it's worth all the effort and the time and the energy and the connection that you're building with this person because they know you care.
Yeah, and I think that's a very critical part of leadership and management
Yeah,
is knowing that your manager cares about you, because statistically, I think it's something like 55% of people surveyed, they didn't leave because the company, they left because of their immediate manager.
exactly.
So I think the better that we get at building leaders and managers, it's a benefit for all the stakeholders involved.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. That was amazing, Keo. I am so grateful. Thank you for sharing your unique journey. And I have gotten so much out of it and so many powerful nuggets, so many powerful takeaways. I um, want, help people to discover the why, listen, connect with them, honor their journey. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable for others, but
Mhm.
continuing to ask, what do you need? Do you want a hug? Do you want advice? Or do you want to be heard? And
Yeah.
so thank you so much for those amazing insights and takeaways. And I appreciate you. And thank you, audience, for being here. I trust that you enjoyed this and take what you need to serve you in your life. And until I see you next time, I'm your sister in flow. May prosperity flow to you, through you, and on to others. Take care. Bye. Bye, Keo. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.